We actually got some surprise episodes of the Trump Show recently because of an FBI search of the former president's golf resort, Mar-a-Lago. It's especially surprising because it seems the public wasn't even supposed to know that it happened. The FBI sent more than 30 agents to the golf resort located in southern Florida. They arrived after sunrise wearing t-shirts and cargo shorts so they could do the search quickly and discreetly. They notified the Secret Service protecting the former president at that location ahead of time so they could be let onto the premises without having to force entry. However, a number of Donald Trump's lawyers were present during the search, and after they informed him of it, he angrily complained on the internet, which is apparently the only reason we know that it happened at all. Trump's publication of the search caused a surge in violent threats against the FBI, leading one disturbed individual to attack the FBI Cincinnati office with a rifle and a nail gun. Probably this was the reason the FBI wanted the search to be a secret, but the FBI got what they came for: numerous sensitive government records. The former president claims that he declassified all the documents on the premises, and his supporters believe that this makes the forceful seizure of those documents unwarranted. But the classification of the documents is actually irrelevant because such documents are still government property, and the FBI had overwhelming evidence that Donald Trump himself had no intention of ever turning them over. In fact, it seems they had concrete evidence that Trump was actively trying to hide or destroy some of that material, and that he was lying to investigators. Now, I know some people think that classified documents are overblown in their importance, but this is a misconception. It's true that documents are occasionally overclassified or made classified only to hide politically inconvenient facts, but often amateur observers merely think that classified information isn't a big deal because they lack the expertise to capitalize on the information. And I would know because I have previously worked for the United States government, held a security clearance, and been trained in the proper handling of government documents. Please don't bother asking me for details on that. I will not provide any. For example, who remembers this? This is a photo of a protest flag shared by actor Shia LaBeouf. Obsessed internet trolls use location data from related images, flight records, and weather data to determine the exact location of this flag and take it down. The US government has taken similar steps to identify the location where terrorist propaganda was filmed. A single image can contain a wealth of information by itself, but foreign governments have access to a lot of other information, both publicly available and gathered from their own surveillance efforts. And when you combine multiple pieces of information together and show it to a bunch of scientific experts, the amount of information they can learn is tremendous. So just because a classified document doesn't mean anything to you, doesn't mean it isn't extremely valuable to a foreign adversary. That's why most documents get classified by people with expertise in the specific methods or technologies described, because those people understand what a clever adversary could do with that information. Now, does this mean that Donald Trump will be indicted for all of this? Well, probably not, actually. But I do now feel that the DOJ does intend to indict Donald Trump eventually. Based on Attorney General Merrick Garland's interview with journalist Lester Holt in March, it seems he's primarily interested in enforcing the rule of law. He does not seem to be deterred by the threats of violence from U.S. citizens, and seems to believe that the best way to maintain the DOJ's reputation is to enforce the law rather than avoid prosecuting anyone because of their political visibility. So I think the question is really just what crimes the DOJ thinks they can get a conviction on, and of those, which is the best summary of Donald Trump's crimes: misuse of government resources, theft of government property, dereliction of duty, defrauding the American people, attempting to defraud a U.S. election, obstruction of official government proceedings, obstruction of justice, or something else, who knows. So the obstruction of justice specifically related to the documents being kept at Mar-a-Lago may be part of an ultimate case against the former president, but I doubt it will be used for an independent charge. After all, they didn't charge Hillary Clinton over her emails. Never mind the fact that probably most people who did what either Hillary or Donald are accused of doing would be in prison. Unclassified documents are still produced by government employees and contractors, and they constitute official government records subject to federal record-keeping laws. Presidential records are subject to additional laws. Government records include emails, project and meeting notes, presentations, and reports. By law, these items must be preserved even after the employees that produce them are long gone, so that, for example, U.S. citizens can request them via a Freedom of Information Act request. Typically, even unclassified reports intended for release to the public cannot be released to the public until they are formally submitted for review and cleared for release. So when it comes to the documents at Trump's resort, for example, classified or not, they are, legally speaking, government property. As former president, he has as much legal right to keep those documents without authorization as he does to Air Force One, which is to say, none at all. Now, when it comes to the small model of Air Force One Trump is said to have taken as a souvenir, I suppose an exception can be made. However, many of the documents recovered are not nearly as innocent as that, and the burning question at the moment is why Donald Trump held on to some of these things, and why was he so unwilling to give them up that the FBI had to resort to a search warrant. Because what was supposed to happen was that Donald Trump would leave records behind at the White House and they would be stored by the National Archives and Records Administration, and he could then, at any time, request secure access to those records. There's a false story about Obama hoarding documents going about. Apparently, he's working to digitize a literal warehouse full of records, but that warehouse is owned and operated by the National Archives. So Donald Trump is expending a great amount of effort to circumvent the normal way of managing government records, and it's not clear why it's so important to him that he do this. Why does he need exclusive, unsecured access to all this stuff? And this question probably contributed to the FBI search. A search requires a warrant signed by a judge. The judge must be provided a written explanation called an affidavit that justifies the warrant. Lawyers representing U.S. news media petitioned the judge to release the affidavit about a week ago in the interest of transparency. Because the affidavit contains information related to ongoing criminal investigations, including witnesses subject to defamation and intimidation whose privacy should be respected, and other individuals which, by law, must be protected, the Department of Justice was allowed to submit a redacted version of the affidavit to the judge to be released, and the redacted version was just released at noon on the 26th. And from the released documents, we know that after being pestered for his records for more than a year, former President Trump returned 15 boxes of documents to the National Archives that contained 184 unique documents bearing classification markings, including 25 marked top secret. Compare this to Hillary Clinton's private email server, which reportedly housed 65 secret and 22 top secret emails, including at least 2 containing sensitive compartmented information. Her server was not particularly secure and would have been vulnerable to hacking by foreign agents. But unlike the documents in Trump's possession, these emails were improperly marked to indicate they were classified. They did not have the classification specification in the email subject line or at the head and foot of the email body as standard policy requires. Physical documents always have very conspicuous classification headers and are supposed to be stored with even more conspicuous cover sheets and inside clearly labeled folders and containers. But many of the documents in the initial set returned by the former president apparently had their classification folders discarded. I'll note that any government employee that comes within 100 feet of classified documents takes annual training related to recognizing and handling classified documents. This training includes what to do if you find a misplaced classified document, namely, take the document into your personal possession and hand deliver it to security personnel immediately so that they can investigate where it came from and do a damage assessment. Immediately, as in the same day, not 18 months later. And federal investigators had reason to believe that there were more such documents at Trump's resort and issued a subpoena in the spring compelling the return of those remaining documents. And around this time, investigators made a trip to the resort. But after a statement from Trump's lawyers that everything had been returned, investigators had reason to believe that this statement was a lie and that still more documents remained at Mar-a-Lago. They subpoenaed CCTV footage from the resort, and it showed documents being moved out of view in advance of officials coming to visit. Personally, I don't find it plausible that some no-name aide is responsible for the documents being at Donald Trump's estate, and it seems probable that the Department of Justice will be able to prove he was personally aware of all the sensitive documents in his possession. They'll find his fingerprints on the documents. They may find dated notes in his own handwriting on and beside them. They may have multiple witnesses testifying to his knowledge concerning these documents. They may even have Trump's handling of the documents on camera as recorded by his own CCTV system. And per the documents released on the 26th, the FBI anticipated finding evidence of obstruction of justice during their search. They may have communications between Trump and others showing he was aware of unreturned documents, that he conspired to intentionally hide or destroy them, or possibly that he intended to forge a backdated declassification order to avoid some of his criminal liability. Hence, the search warrant. And according to the FBI search warrant, which was unsealed 2 weeks ago, numerous additional confidential, secret, and top secret documents were recovered by the FBI search. So the FBI had every reason to think that documents, which Donald Trump had no legal right to hold on to, were still there, and that Donald Trump knew this but had no intention of ever turning them over. So the biggest difference between this situation and Hillary Clinton's emails comes down to the strength of the case for personal culpability. All the classified information on Hillary Clinton's private email server was necessarily sent to her by government employees. A State Department investigation found 91 individuals culpable. There was really a lax culture around handling classified documents in the State Department, and Hillary Clinton was just one part of it. But Donald Trump reportedly would often just place classified documents in his pocket without telling anyone and take them home with him. There's little evidence that people working with Trump thought this was acceptable or helped him in doing this. Rather, many people were alarmed and took steps to try and stop it. And the idea of classified information being leaked to foreign adversaries is not hypothetical in Trump's case, as it was with Hillary's emails. We know that Donald Trump has already leaked valuable information in the past. For example, in 2017, it was reported that Trump disclosed classified information to representatives of the Russian government. That disclosure jeopardized the life of a high-level source inside the Russian government, which the CIA had to promptly extract. That kind of information would have been marked TS/SCI/HCS, or Top Secret Sensitive Compartmented Information relating to the Human Source Intelligence Control System, and reportedly a number of TS documents, SCI documents, and HES documents were being kept at Trump's resort. And in 2019, President Trump tweeted an overhead photo of an Iranian launch pad. Experts remarked that the character and quality of the photo indicated it must have come from a highly classified U.S. reconnaissance satellite with capabilities far beyond those possessed by most countries. That kind of image would likely have been classified as top secret sensitive compartmented information. The image inherently gives away details of the technology that was used to acquire it, and it potentially causes enemy countries to hide activities that we used to be able to surveil because now they know we can see what they're doing. So this image, or one like it, may have been among those recovered from the former president's Gulf resort. And you might recall that when the issue of classification was raised, when that satellite image was tweeted out, it was affirmed that the President of the United States has unilateral authority to declassify classified information. A significant difference in that case, however, is that the declassified information was provided to the public. And in the case of documents stored at Trump's resort, that doesn't seem to be the case, making the validity of that declassification suspect. But among the classified documents recovered by the FBI were those marked as coming from spies, wiretaps, bugs, and means and methods so secret the United States doesn't even share them with its closest allies. And documents that fall into these categories typically contain what's called national defense information, which is protected separately from classified information in which the president has no authority to disseminate. If the former president thought the information in these documents should be made public, why hasn't he made them public? And if they shouldn't be made public, why did he declassify them? And if he didn't declassify them, what are they doing at his Gulf resort? Are they just so cool that it's worth the U.S. losing access to foreign communications our enemies think are secret? Couldn't he just have, remembered the cool things he saw as president? Is Donald just so careless that he doesn't care if our spies embedded at high levels in foreign governments get found and killed? Was requesting secure access from the National Archives that much of an inconvenience? These documents were not safe at his resort. People, possibly including Secret Service agents, knew that sensitive information was there, and they told the U.S. government. And the FBI was able to just walk in and carry the stuff out because it was not properly secured. Accessing run-of-the-mill secret documents requires you to have minimally a security clearance and a need to know. But secret documents are kept inside safes, inside access-controlled buildings, inside compounds protected by armed guards. Normally, you have to surrender any phones, Bluetooth-enabled devices, or other smart devices to be allowed near that material, and your access to that material is always logged. And that's just normal stuff. When it comes to the kinds of documents that Trump had in cardboard boxes in the basement of his Gulf resort, which is trafficked by countless civilian guests, these documents are never seen outside of highly specialized facilities. It's completely unacceptable for them to have been sitting on his private property for months. And if we were talking about anyone other than the former president, he'd be in prison. What's next? I can't wait to find out. Will Trump announce his presidential run, race to the head of the polls, and be assassinated by one of his many enemies? Will DeSantis become president in 2024 and pardon Trump before he's charged? Will Trump go down for a lesser state crime instead? Will all the stress get to him and give Trump a heart attack? Will he run away to Russia to avoid prosecution? Who's the next person to be shot by a Trump supporter? Merrick Garland, a judge? Will that stop investigations, or will the FBI and DOJ quicken pace in response? I'm on the edge of my seat.